trying to communicate with the American people. We're trying to maybe bring the American people a little closer to you and get some answers. To you, Mr. President, when was the moment that you thought, we got to move on this?
Well, I think when I started seeing and reading about China and seeing what was going on in China, Wuhan specifically, it seemed to come mostly out of there, that area, the province. And when I saw that and I saw the kind of death they were, talking about on television, in the papers, and I started reading a lot about it. And really, when I had to make a decision, do I stop people from China and specifically that area, but from China to come into the country? And everybody was against it. Almost everybody, I would say, was just absolutely against it. We've never done it before. We never made a decision like that.
Did somebody come to you with a bit of information, a piece of data? Was it a world leader? Was it a member of your own team?
It was instinct. We had a large group of people right behind me in the Oval Office, and I consulted with Mike, but we made a decision. I made a decision to close off to China. That was weeks early, and honestly, I took a lot of heat. Thousands and thousands of more people, probably tens of thousands, would be dead right now if I didn't make that decision. And I must say, doctors, nobody wanted to make that decision at the time. It was very, very early. Call it luck or call it talent, it doesn't matter. We made a great decision. I took a lot of heat from China. They weren't happy with it. Now they understand it. They've really, we're doing just fine, but they were not happy with it. I took a lot of heat from a lot of people.
In the past day and a half, you got a lot of attention for this. A tweet that I think went out late at night, you said we cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. So you start to look at this 15-day period, which will come to us. Day 15 is next Monday today, arguably day 9. What are you trying to gauge as to how you can open the country back up again?
Yeah. When you say I took a lot of heat for that, essentially, I really didn't. I mean, a lot of people agree with me. Our country's not supposed to be, it's not built to shut down. Our people are full of vim and vigor and energy. They don't want to be locked into a house or an apartment or some space. It's not for our country. We're not built that way. And I said, I don't want the cure to be worse than the problem itself. The problem being obviously the problem. And, you can destroy a country this way by closing it down, where it literally goes from being the most prosperous. I mean, we had the best economy in the history of our country 3 weeks ago. And then all of a sudden we're supposed to shut it down. And then we're supposed to pay people not to go to work. We never had that. We used to pay people to go to work.
But this is a government order to go ahead and stay home. It's tricky, though, when you try and turn the faucet back on.
It's very tricky.
New York could be different from
It is.
Utah. Louisiana could be different from Arizona. So how do you go about making that decision?
Well, you have to make the decision. Look, we lose thousands. I brought some numbers here. We lose thousands and thousands of people a year to the flu. We don't turn the country off. I mean, every year. Now, when I heard the number, we average 37,000 people a year. Can you believe that? And actually, this year we're having a bad flu season. But we lose thousands of people a year to the flu. We never turn the country off. We lose much more than that to automobile accidents. We didn't call up the automobile company to say, stop making cars. We don't want any cars anymore. We have to get back to work. Now, with all of that being said, it's incredible what the American people have done. And honestly, the American people have learned. We've all learned together between the shaking of the hands and the washing of the hands. Well, I used to wash my hands, and I always wash my hands a lot. I never was a big believer in shaking hands. Once I become a politician, you shake hands and you get a little bit used to it. Like, immediately when I see you, I sort of apologize that I'm not shaking your hand.
We exchange air elbows, which seems to be the thing to say.
But we have great things for not only companies, forget the companies. The companies are nothing other than they are an employer of thousands and thousands of people, and they pay them very well. We want to protect our workers. I want to protect our workers. Workers first. But you have to protect companies like Boeing. They had a real bad year, let's face it, with the problems. And they were in trouble before this, and then all of a sudden this happened. We can't lose a Boeing, and we can't lose some of these companies. And companies, frankly, Bill, that were solid as like AAA companies, because of what's happened over the last couple of weeks, they go from AAA to being like they could use a hand.
Tough time.
We can't lose those companies. If we lose those companies, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs, millions of jobs. The faster we go back, the better it's going to be. We have a pent-up energy that's going to be unbelievable. We're going to bring it back fast. I really believe that.
I've got a lot more questions.
But no, the bill is very much focused on the small business person. It's very much focused on small companies, including restaurants and all sorts of small companies. And what people don't realize, you know, you're talking about these massive, we have the greatest companies in the world. You add them all up, and the small businesses are just about equal in size to these massive companies, of which we have many also. It's the engine of our country, small business. This bill is absolutely aimed at the small business and the worker and the workers of those small businesses and the owners. The owners are going to need help. They're going to need some loans. They're going to need things, and we're going to be able to take care of them because we don't want those small businesses to go out of business, nor do we want the big businesses to go out of business.
When they said, Mr. President, we got to shut this down, how hard did you push back?
Well, I'll tell you, I never heard of such a thing. We've had flus where we lose 36,000. We've lost as many, I guess, as 78,000 people in 1 year. And they came in and they said to me, sir, we're going to have to close the country. I said, what are you talking about? Well, we have a virus, it's coming in, and I knew that, and I made the early decision with China. So I already closed it off to China, and that was a long time before they came in. But they came in, experts, and they said, we're going to have to close the country. I said, we've never closed the country before. This never happened before. You're saying, I said, are you serious about this? We are going to take this country that's fully employed, where we have 160 million people working, and you tell me we have to close it, and people are going to go out of business, and they're going to go bankrupt, and they're not going to have jobs? What are we talking about here? Don't forget, this has never been done. We've had flus before. We've had viruses before. So this is something new. And this is why I say we have to, I gave it 2 weeks, and I guess by Monday or Tuesday it's about 2 weeks, and we'll assess at that time, and we'll give it some more time if we need a little more time. But we have to open this country up.
When they came to you and had that conversation with you, how long did it take you to accept that new reality?
Well, I accept things. I understand things very quickly. I mean, I understood exactly what they were saying. But we can socially distance ourselves and go to work, and you have to work a little bit harder. You can clean your hands 5 times more than you used to. You don't have to shake hands anymore with people. That might be something good coming out of this. Although I must tell you, as a politician, it's a lot warmer when you walk into a crowd and you're shaking a lot of people's hands. You love those people.
I'd agree with you.
They love me and I love them, but it is a little bit colder. But you won't be shaking hands for at least a while, and things will happen. But we have to put the country to work. Look, you're going to lose a number of people to the flu, but you're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. You're going to lose people. You're going to have suicides by the thousands. You're going to have all sorts of things happen. You're going to have instability. You can't just come in and say, let's close up the United States of America, the most successful country in the world by far. When I came in, when I was elected, and you knew this number, China was going to overtake us in the year 2019. It wasn't even close. We went way up, and they didn't. We've done great. They pay us a fortune in tariffs and everything else, and yet we have a good relationship with them. We just signed a trade deal. But we're the number one in the world by far. And now a few people walk into the Oval Office and say, sir, we have to close up the country.
And
I said, what are you talking about?
That, Mr. President, must have been a very difficult thing to accept.
One of the most difficult decisions I've ever made, because I knew that when you do it, as soon as you do it, you're going to drop, they're talking about 20 or 25 points of GDP. Nobody's ever heard of 25 points. If we went down a point, that's a big deal. Now all of a sudden, you're basically turning off the country. I said, this has never been done before. What are you talking about? But we understand it. You have hot spots, but we've had hot spots before. We've had horrible flus. Think of it. We average 36,000 people. Death. I'm not talking about cases. I'm talking about death. 36,000 deaths a year. People die, 36 from the flu. But we've never closed down the country for the flu. So you say to yourself, what is this all about? Now,
How did you?
It's never been done.
How did you process that?
Not good. I wasn't happy about it, and I also knew that I had to do it because, look, with Turkey, I give this as an example, and Syria, I said, sign a deal with the Kurds, make peace. Erdogan, he didn't want to. He's a man who loves Turkey, and I have a very good relation. I said, sign a deal. He didn't really want to. The Kurds didn't really want to. And it went on, the so-called safe zone, recently, a few months ago. I said, sign a deal. Do me a favor, sign a deal. Get it done. They didn't really want to. All of a sudden, they start fighting. And it was vicious, and other countries got involved. Now I say, let's sign a deal. They said, okay, we'll sign a deal. We needed a period because I don't think, if I would have not done it, we would have been unbelievably criticized for not doing it, but it's never been done before.
One more.
Bill, somehow the word got out that this is the thing we're supposed to be doing. Now, we've had some really bad epidemics and other things. I mean, we're going this pandemic, but we've had bad epidemics. I'm sure they could have been called pandemics. But we never did a thing like this before. But I had to do it. It's been very painful for our country and very destabilizing for our country. We have to go back to work much sooner than people thought. And people can go back to work and they can also practice good judgment.
One last question, then we'll get back to our viewers here too. Okay. A month ago, the CDC had an initial test that failed. At that moment, late February, you said it's perfect. And it wasn't perfect. So what happened there in the early stages?
Well, what I said
in late February?
What I said is perfect was my conversation with the head of the Ukraine. That's what I really said is perfect. Okay, that was another whole scandal nonsense, a total, witch hunt. But this one is a much different thing. We had other administrations, not just the last one, they built up a platform. They built up a test. But the test was no good. It didn't handle large numbers of people. It was okay for a very small group, but not for a large group. So we had to break it down.
Did the CDC screw up, or did you screw
up?
No,
we did not screw up.
Where did this
And
go
I don't
wrong?
think CDC screwed up either. They had a test that would have worked for a small group of people. In other words, for a normal problem. I don't think anybody could have, in all fairness to CDC, and this is a big government agency, and they're very good people in there, but nobody ever expected a thing like this. Nobody would say that millions and millions of people would have been tested. So what we did is we broke that egg, we broke that system, and we've created a new system that now we're doing unbelievably big numbers, and it's set for the future should we ever need it again. I hope we don't need it again.
Thank you for your time. We're going to